Welcome back to 40 TV. I'm your host, 40. Today we're going over part 4 of my mastering series of tutorials with iZotope Ozone 5 plugin. I'm using the advanced version, however, if you're using the standard version, I'll try to point out some of the differences. So let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and audition the track that I have so far. If you haven't seen part 1, 2, or 3, check out the description of the video. I should have links in there so you can watch the first 3 parts. I'll go ahead and press spacebar to audition. Here we go. So there we go. I'm going to bypass the maximizer for now. The dynamics module is already selected. I'm going to unbypass it by clicking on the power button here. You'll notice that that gray foggy overlay is now gone. Right now we're looking at band 1. As you can tell that this dynamics module is a multi-band capable module. We can also tell that when we click on the graph here, we'll notice that the dynamics, the exciter, and the stereo imager are multi-band capable. They use a shared crossover if they're inside this larger grade area, meaning whatever bands I set will be the same in each of the different modules if they're within this shared crossover. The dynamics module is currently broken apart, so what I'm using for the exciter and what I'm using for the dynamics can be different. And for this example, we're going to leave it like that. If I wanted to drag it back in here so that they use the same crossover, I could do so. Alternatively, I could break apart the stereo imaging as well. I'll go ahead and click on close for now. So we're in band 1. Right now I have the settings set at 120 Hertz for the first band of the low end. The low mids set from 120 to 1K roughly. The high mids 1K to 8K, and then 8K on up for the highs. We can switch between the different bands by clicking up here between 1 and 4. If we want to see all bands, we can click on Show All. This will give us a different view. We won't see the same exact controls that we can see when we have one band selected. For example, this graphical overlay here. We won't be able to select Autogain, for example, when we're seeing all of them. However, there is a gain for each independent band. So depending on what you want to see, these are some of the options. I'm going to go back to band number 1. Another important thing to note, this is you can link all your band controls. So if you know that you have a rough starting point for all of them, you can click on this. Any changes made to one band will appear on all bands. Over here on the right, in the fader section, right now it says global. If we click on the button, we can switch to band. We have independent gain controls as well as mix controls for band as well as global. Changes made to global. So for example, if you're trying to achieve that parallel compression popular in electronic music in New York back in the day, then making a change to the mix, maybe dropping it down to 50, 60, 70, somewhere around there on the global setting will be the same as applying parallel compression. That can be achieved in other ways, but in this plugin, it's really quick, really simple. I'm going to drag it back up to 100% for now. I'm going to switch it back over to band. And Autogain, for those of you who don't know what Autogain is, whenever you apply compression to a track, depending on the ratio that's set, anything above 1.0, which obviously if you only have 1.0, you're not really compressing. But any compression being applied to the track is going to lessen the perceived volume. If you want to automatically make it up, you can click on Auto Gain, or alternatively, if it's off, you can raise the gain yourself to the desired output. Next, so in this view right here that we're looking at the crossover view where you can select the bands, etc. When we click here, this is the gain reduction trace view. So as compression is being applied, it's going to show us graphically in here, and better to show this example once we get working. Once you have your crossover set points set, then I would switch over to this gain reduction trace view so you can see what's going down. Over here on the left side of this threshold area, you'll have 3 different selectable knobs, if you will, or faders. The top left one, this is for your limiter. The second one on the right, this is for your compressor, and the bottom one on the left is for the gate. Both the limiter and the gate can be used as expanders. The limiter can be set as an upward expander, and the gate can be set as an expander. The way you set them as expanders is once you reach 1 to 1, if you drag the slider over here to the left, you're going to be setting this as an expander. I'm going to undo by pressing or holding Alt and clicking on this, and it's going to set it back to its default to... Oh, my brain is drawing blanks today, but I'm not redoing this tutorial. Okay, so we have obviously ratios for the limiter, the compressor, and the gate. And when setting these, you don't necessarily have to use a gate. You don't necessarily have to use a limiter here in the dynamics module, but they are all separate of each other. Obviously, in your maximizer, you're going to have a brick wall limiter so that you're not peaking beyond a certain point. However, the limiter within the dynamics module signal can still push through. So if you're trying to tame some crazy transients, then this is the place to do it. I'm going to press spacebar on my keyboard. In fact, I'm going to switch back over to the band view. I'm going to solo the low end band. Switch back to the gain reduction trace view. I'm going to press spacebar and audition this for a second to see what's happening here within the threshold. So we see a histogram happening here. If we'd rather see gain reduction as we make changes to this slider here, which is the threshold, then we can right click, go to dynamics options, and switch from histogram here to gain reduction. This is a more common view that you'd be used to. You're going to see the red meters lowering here. As I drop my threshold, of course we have to set some type of compression, right? So let's set this to, I don't know, 2.8. You're not trying to go too crazy here. As we drag this threshold down, you notice that there's some severe compression going on. So if we drag this up a little bit, also, this gain reduction trace is showing us in dB how much we're taking away. It may not be as obvious right here, but in the gain reduction trace it is. So I can make changes here till maybe I'm dropping 6 dB. So maybe somewhere around here. Next, right now we're using peak as the algorithm. This is determining when this compressor, limiter, and gate are happening. If you're using the regular version of the plugin, I recommend using RMS. It's more of an average instead of just the transients triggering the compressor, the limiter, or the gate. It's using the average of the sound to do so. If you're using the advanced version, something even better is envelope. Envelope is basically equal volume settings throughout the frequency range in order to trigger these things. So definitely something to use if you have that capability. So once we set our ratio for the compressor, we want to make sure that our attack and release are set properly. Your attack should be fast enough so that when the transients are about to hit, that's as quick as the compressor is going to engage. So after 10 milliseconds, bam, hit it. How long after that transient hits and the compression happens do you want it to release? You don't want this to be too long, because if it's too long, then what's going to happen is the compressor is never going to fully recover. If it's too short, it's going to sound like slappy or pumpish. So let's play with these settings as we're listening to the low end. Alternatively, you'll notice as I drag that down, the visual feedback up here in the gain reduction trace changes. So let's watch this. I'm going to make some exaggerated changes so we can hear it or see it. Notice up here at this point, these parts did not fully recover in the compressor. Really back at 90 milliseconds, 100 milliseconds, almost at the default value. It's pretty cool for the low end. If we want to change the knee, this is a setting only available in the advanced version. You can make modifications here, or you can drag out on these handles. When making changes to the knee, basically what's happening is, as soon as this threshold is hit, which is what this dot is here, how do you want that change to happen? Do you want it to happen hard? If you do, then you can set a knee to 0. If you want it to happen a little bit softer, you can drag this out or increase the knee over here. Depending on what you're going for. Sometimes you want that hard compression. And when I say hard, I'm not talking about audibly. I'm not talking about, let's see, what's the best way to describe this? Sometimes you're looking for that noticeably compressed sound. And if you're doing that, then maybe setting this to 0 is good. Alternatively, if you set your knee to 0, for example, and you do some type of mix within your global settings for some type of parallel compression, you're still going to be letting some of your transients through to keep some of your dynamics through that parallel compression. However, you're going to get the benefits of squashing the sound by having a low knee or a zero knee, and maybe even a high compression. In multi-band compression or dynamics for mastering, you're never looking to over-compress. You're never going to be having crazy numbers here like 5, 6, 7, anything like that. That's something that you would be doing within each track when you're compressing them individually. But for example, if you have the advanced version of this plugin, you could load just the dynamics module without the other FAT, set this to one band, and compress it as such. But in a mastering sense, most of your sounds are basically where you want them to. This is your glue. The dynamics module is your glue to make everything mesh within the bands, if you will, right? Or maybe to get rid of a few problems, etc. So for this particular situation, I'm going to switch back right now, go to Dynamics Options, and I'm going to switch back from Gain Reduction, switch back to Histogram, and click on OK. When I do so, it's going to show us a histogram here. A common thing to do is drag this threshold of your compressor to the meat of this histogram. So let me show you by pressing spacebar. So when I bring it down here, notice this is some serious stuff going on as far as the gain trace reduction is happening. I do not have auto gain on, so this may be very maybe even inaudible. In my headphones, it's extremely low. If I click on auto gain, it's going to make up any gain or perceived volume that it's taken away by adjusting this threshold. So I'll go ahead and press spacebar. So maybe right here at -20. Another thing we can do with this limiter, maybe we want the compressor just to deal with the meat of this particular low end band. We can bring this threshold of the limiter. It's set to 10:1. That's fine. Fast attack, the release is at 100 milliseconds. That's fine. We'll drag this threshold just till it starts touching the beginning of the waveform. By doing so, the limiter is dealing with really the harshest of the transients, the stuff that's peaking up at the top, and the compressor is dealing with the meat of the signal. If you wanted to, we can boost the really lows by turning this gate into an expander, dragging this up, pulling this slider to the left. I'm not going to do so in this example. I rarely use expanders myself, but you have that option. So once we have this set to something of our liking, which now it sounds pretty good, I'm going to switch over to band 2. I'll switch back up over here. I'll unsolo this band. I'll solo the low mid band. I'll switch back to the gain reduction view or gain reduction trace view. I'm going to press spacebar. I'm going to drag this down to the meat of the sound with the histogram playing. I'm going to set my ratio for this low mid maybe to, I don't know, 2.0. As far as the knee is concerned, let's drag this up. We'll set this to 2. Maybe we'll set it to an 80 millisecond release, and let's go ahead and play with the compressor threshold. So right there, dragging the threshold of the compressor to -25, the limiter to -13.8. Again, the point of dragging this limiter down is to deal with the harshest of the transients and allow the compressor to be a little bit more efficient. I'm not going to use the gate in this example. Again, if we turn auto gain off, we'll hear that how much this is compressing. And with it on, you'll notice that increase in perceived volume when we turn auto gain on. Obviously, I could dial it in myself by raising the gain here, but auto gain is working just fine right now. I'm going to switch on over to 3. Leave the limiter at the default settings. The compressor, this is for high mids. We want to make sure we come and we solo the right band. I'll switch back over. Maybe for compression, same thing. Let's set it to 2:1. And again, I'm going to look at the histogram as this is being played, maybe drop this down to 80 milliseconds as far as the release is concerned. Or actually, let's set it to 100. That's fine. Go ahead, press spacebar, and then make changes. So maybe somewhere around there. Again, maybe with the before or with the Autogain turned off. And that's with it on. So we're making progress, quick progress in fact. We'll come back over here to the crossover band view. I'll solo my highs, I'll unsolo the high mids, switch back over the gain reduction trace. For this, yeah, you know, I don't know. Maybe 120 for the release. Or even 100, that's fine. We'll leave these as the default settings as far as the compression is concerned, or the ratio for the compressor. I'll set it to 1.5. I'm going to make some adjustments here. I'll pull the threshold of the gate down because I'm not using the gate. And let's make some adjustments. So somewhere around there. And again, let's go ahead and unsolo this. We're going to do a solo of just the dynamics module, and then we'll bypass it to hear what it sounds like with and without all of these controls. So right there, that's just soloing the dynamics module with the changes we've made. I'm going to go ahead and bypass as it's playing. Watch to see when I unbypass to hear the difference. So really what you should hear when you're listening to these changes, again, because the ratios are not very high, and these are already, the sounds are coming from samples. These samples have already been compressed. They already sound, the good parts of them have already been brought out. If this was live material, it would sound incredibly different. But these pre-recorded samples, they sound good already. I've already tuned the mix a little bit. So making these small, minute changes with low ratios on the compressor, etc., we're not going to hear dramatic differences. But that's the point of mastering. You're not looking for, unless the mix of your track and everything else has gone wrong, the differences are not going to be amazing. The amazing part comes with the maximizer, but that's where you're really pushing it. These other things or other modules are meant to be subtle. So I'm going to unsolo this. I'm going to enable the maximizer or unbypass it. Let's hear what we have so far. And then I'm going to bypass the entire plugin and see where we started and where we've gone. So there you go. There you have it, the dynamics module. Just a couple other things to point out. You can process in mid-side just like some of the other modules. So if we wanted to affect the mids or the sides differently, I showed you how to use the mid-side module in part 3. If you wanted to affect, for example, the lows band of the crossover, you'd only be working in mids probably. You wouldn't be playing with sides because your kicks, your bass, etc. is all happening on your mids. If you needed to tighten things up, this would be one route maybe that you would take. If maybe in the high mids you wanted to make some changes to the side information, you can do so. You probably wouldn't be affecting, well, maybe you would be affecting because your vocals are happening in this range, both your lead and your backup, etc. So you'd be affecting both your mid and your sides. Same as up here, down here, maybe a little bit of both. Maybe even expanding things. It depends, you know what I mean? But for this example, we use the stereo module. I'm going to show you one other thing. When we right-click here, go to the Dynamics options. This curve level meter, if we uncheck this box, it gets rid of the graphical representation that's happening here. I'll show you. Notice it's gone as we're playing the track. You don't see it here. I don't know why you do that, but you have that availability. If we switch on over to gain reduction, then right here, this gain reduction drawing mode can either be detached, meaning that it's coming from the top, or it can be attached to the meters. And if we go back to the dynamics options, we click on attach, say OK, the gain reduction will be attached to the meters themselves. I personally like them detached if I'm looking at gain reduction. If you have the advanced version of the plugin, there is look ahead. Look ahead can happen because this is a digital dynamics processor. So look ahead is how far in advance, right now 1 millisecond, to look into the future of this track for the transients. So when it's going to enable compression, limiting, gating, etc., how far ahead do you want to look to know what's going to happen as far as the sound is occurring? So if you have the advanced version, you can make changes to this here. I think that's basically covered it, guys. In the next tutorial, we'll go over stereo imaging, lightly brush on post-equalization, and I'm not sure if I'll throw the maximizer in that tutorial or save that for part 6. So this is either going to be a 5-part or 6-part series. I hope you guys have enjoyed the tutorial so far. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. And if you like my content, please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Alright guys, till next time, I'm out.